Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Contango Ore's live investment summit today, hosted by Six. I'm pleased to introduce our speaker for today. We have President and CEO Rick Van Nieuwenhuizen. Rick is going to walk us through a company presentation, and then we'll be accepting questions live. So as a reminder, you can submit your questions at any time on the Q&A panel on the right-hand side of your screen. And as always, the summit is being recorded and will be available to watch afterwards on Six.com. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to you, Rick, to get things started.
Perfect, Dasha. Well, thank you very much, and thank you everyone for joining us for an update and review of Contango Ore and our projects in Alaska. Of course, I'll be making some forward-looking statements, and I just draw your attention to the cautionary language about mineral resources and reserves and non-GAAP measures. So after that exciting introduction, we'll start with just a high-level overview of the company. We're in Alaska. We have a project called the Peak Gold Project, 1.3 million ounces of established measured indicated resources there. High-quality project, 4 grams per ton at surface, open pitable mining scenario. And the convenient thing is we are right off the Alaska Highway. So unlike a lot of projects in Alaska, we don't have infrastructure challenges. We literally are about 10 miles off one of the major highway routes in the state. And we are working on lands owned by the Tetlin Alaska Native Tribe. We have an agreement with the tribe that involves a royalty to them and payments, advance payments. We've had a close working relationship with the tribe for well over 10 years now. Most recently, as we announced late September, we formed a business partnership with Kinross Gold, and specifically their Fort Knox operation, to fast track the development of the Peak Gold deposit, and basically by utilizing the existing facilities at Fort Knox. Because we're on the highway, we can easily transport our ore up the highway, and it's of a grade that we can afford to pay for the transportation costs to get to the Fort Knox mill. So that really streamlines our project permitting, streamlines our capital needs, and streamlines the overall execution of getting this project into production. So I'll just describe here the relationship. This is the deposit itself. It sits on top of a low group of hills that are referred to as the Tetlin Hills. We have formed a 70-30 joint venture relationship with Kinross, with ourselves owning 30%, Kinross owning 70%, and being the operator and manager of the project. The transaction included Kinross acquiring Royal Gold's interest. They had a 40% interest in the project, and we sold then a 30% interest, a half of our interest, to Kinross, to total the 70. Royal Gold retaining a gold and silver royalty out of the project, which of course that's their main interest. They're a royalty company, and so I think everybody got what they wanted to do out of the deal. It was a win-win deal all the way around, and as I said, allows us to take advantage of the existing facilities at Fort Knox, both the mill and the tailings facility, which obviously simplifies our execution plan. Kinross guidance is that we'll produce 1 million ounces of gold equivalent, gold silver ounces out of the project over a 4.5 year timeline. Capital cost guidance at this time is about $110 million in total, and with a startup in 2024. Our share of production would be about a little over 220,000 ounces of annual production expected out of the operation. Our share would be a little over 65,000 ounces. And again, guidance is from Kinross is that we were producing gold equivalent ounces at $750 all-in sustaining costs, which is pretty good price to when you consider the price of gold today and what we certainly expect it to be over the long term here. We are currently undertaking an $18 million joint venture program funded by both parties. Our share was about $5.4 million. That's to get the project ready for permitting and to complete a feasibility study, which would be done in 2022. We expect the permitting process to take 1 to 2 years. with construction then starting up in 2023. And again, we're not building much on site. It's basically upgrading the road, making some changes to the Fort Knox mill just to basically get a conveyor belt and a loading platform to get the ore into the mill. And again, not much at site here since we're just mining. We're not building a mill and a tailings facility. So it's a truck shop and a few ancillary areas for people to work in and house administration and that sort of thing. So again, very low risk execution plan. Just a little bit on the company. We are currently traded on the OTCQB. We're pursuing a New York Stock Exchange American listing. We are completing what's called an SK 1300. It's similar to the it's a U.S. version of 43101 in Canada. With the new administration, they brought on the new rules that had sort of been pending for quite a while. So we expected that this would happen, and we'll end up being one of the first SK 1300 filings for resource companies. So we're a bit of a guinea pig here, but we should have that done here in short order and get our application in to the New York Stock Exchange and our S1 into the SEC for review, and that process is well underway now. Corporately, we have just a little over 6 million shares outstanding. We're institutionally held about 40%, about 40% retail, and then the management and directors, officers and directors, have about a little over 20%. So we're certainly well aligned with shareholders. We have no warrants and no debt, and about $30 million in cash. So we're in good shape. We can certainly fund our share of expenditures expected over the next 2 years to get to a construction decision. As I mentioned, we have a cash call for about $5.4 million of joint venture spending this year, and we expect our overall budget to be just over $10 million. So we'll probably finish the year with about a little under $20 million in the bank. So again, we're in good shape. So looking at the project itself, again, I mentioned some of these numbers, but they're worth going over. To get the project into production in 2024 timeframe, about $110 million in total. That includes the money that we're spending now on feasibility and preparing the project for permitting. 4.5-year mine life, producing 220,000 ounces of gold equivalent per year. And again, the gold equivalent is gold plus silver. And our share would be about 65,000 ounces. The plan is to use an elevated cutoff grade and initially be trucking about 4-gram gold material to the project, or to Kinross's Fort Knox operation. And our cash costs are expected to be in the $750 range per gold equivalent ounce. It's just a very unique project that way, and again, it's because we're right on the road system here in Alaska. Just to put it in context, on a global basis, $750 is kind of in that lower 1/3 of the cash cost curve. So you know, with current prices in the $1,700 range, you can see we'll be making close to $1,000 margin. So that's an excellent margin. When you think about us having a little over 6 million shares outstanding, you know, that's roughly a $10 per share of cash flow. So extraordinary cash flow opportunity for the company. Again, why we can execute this plan is because we are right next to the Alaska Highway. I'm looking south down the Alaska Highway. Just behind the bushes there in the background is the Peak Gold deposit on top of the low-lying Tetlin Hills. It's a little over 10 miles off the road site there. And then we turn around and it's 250 miles up the paved Alaska Highway to the mill at Fort Knox. So we are in the Tintina Gold Belt. We're working in Alaska. I grew up here. I've got a long history of working here. We've worked with a lot of Alaska Native corporations and tribes, so we've got a good working relationship established there. Alaska's, mining is the second, probably the second, third most important industry in the state. It makes up a big part of the direct jobs, providing about 4,500 direct jobs and probably 3 times as many indirect jobs. It's a meaningful amount of the state annual budget that comes in from mining. Some of the big mines, Red Dog, Fort Knox itself, Pogo, coal mine out at Healy there, and then the 2 mines down in southeast Alaska. So, it's mining country. Of course, its history is steeped in mining. So, it's a big part of the economy, and of course, a lot of activity going on in the Tintina Gold Belt and elsewhere in Alaska. But there's just a tremendous amount of work being done in the Tintina Gold Belt, on both sides of the border. The geology doesn't change across the boundary there, and you can see just on the Yukon side, lots of project activity. And it's probably a little hard to read at this scale on this map, but take a look at it in the PDF that's attached, and you'll see there's dozens of active projects throughout the Tintina Gold Belt. Just kind of focusing in a little bit more on the project itself. I won't get into the geology. Except to draw your attention to the strat section there. The mineralization is hosted in a group of metamorphic rocks, generally broadly referred to as the Yukon Tanana terrain. And in our specific subunit, it's these are mainly quartz mica schists, quartz muscovite, quartz chlorite schist. But in our area, we have these limestone units and lime-rich units that are skarnified, and it's these skarn-altered rocks that produce the high grade gold deposits that we have at Peak and North Peak, and we have a huge land position in the heart of the Tintina Gold Belt here. It's made up of 2 main parts. The Tetlin lease is the lease from the Tetlin tribe. This is land that they own outright. It's 675,000 acres, so it's roughly the size of the state of Rhode Island. It's a huge area. We've only worked in the area outlined in the little circle with the mine symbol there at Pico. That's where 90%, 95% of all the effort has been over the last 10 years. We do have some state mining claims that we, Contango, own 100% of. So the joint venture lands are to the Tetlin lease, and then that little area of state mining claims outlined in blue there that are immediately adjacent to the Tetlin lease. The other state claims cover 3 other prospects that I'll just mention briefly towards the end of the project. But again, we own 100% of those. So you can see Contango has exposure to a very sizable land position in the heart of the Tintina Gold Belt. The resource at Peak is underscored here. This was the one released by Kinross, and we're basically producing our own SK 1300 resource that's going to look identical to this when we get that finished here, hopefully soon. 9.2 million tons of just over 4 grams measured in indicated resource. Some additional inferred resources, but the lion's share of the deposit is well drilled out. And again, the whole reason we did this deal with Kinross is because they have excess capacity at their mill at Fort Knox for both milling and for tailings disposal. And this again greatly simplifies our whole execution plan, lowers our capital, lowers the permitting risk. Because we're not permitting a tailings facility, which of course in today's world is, those can be controversial, and so we just eliminate that whole part of the discussion from the plan. And Fort Knox has been operating for 25 years, so they know their costs really well. It's not there's not much of a guessing game there when you've got 25 years of historic data. The nice thing is this mill can produce up about 18 or take up to about 18 million tons of ore a year, and they're only processing around 10 million tons. So lots of excess capacity, and will contribute about 1 million tons. So it's not a huge increase in the mill in what has been going through the mill the last 5 years. So we don't really expect any issues at the mill itself either. So here's the deposit. As I mentioned, it's a skarn type deposit, so they tend to be high grade, high sulfide content skarn, very good metallurgy. We're getting over 90% recovery of gold at surface. And you can see there are two main deposits here, Peak and North Peak, and they dip towards each other. So that when they did all the infill drilling, you can see they're kind of drilling in opposite directions here. That is how you normally drill out a deposit like that. But the consequence of that is we haven't done a lot of drilling between the two deposits. And of course, that is something we'll spend some time on this year with our planned $3 million exploration program. One of the areas that we'll look at is this area between the two deposits, where we think there's potential for pods of mineralization. Don't expect anything huge there, but we do see the potential for some additional pods of high-grade mineralization along this structural corridor. Most of this year's program is really directed towards infill drilling, so converting indicated into measured, so we can get a month-to-month mine plan put together. This is a feasibility level study, along with more metallurgy and hydrology. Again, we've done lots of initial metallurgy. Not concerned about the recovery of the gold. It's certainly consistent with the ores at Fort Knox and the tailings facility there. You just need to collect this information at a detailed mine planning, month-to-month mine planning schedule. So that work is underway. I think the next couple of slides are just you can work year-round in Alaska. Again, if you have access, it's a lot more difficult if you're relying on helicopters. Mostly because of the daylight. We're starting to get into the time of year where we gain about 6 minutes a day, but obviously in February it's dark all day long. But we can work, and we're well set up to work, and this program is ongoing right now. We've got 2 drills turning as I speak, and we are well set up at our facilities to log core and do all the things necessary to execute this program on time and on budget. So I talk about exploration upside. Again, I mentioned we have the Tetlin lease, which is 675,000 acres, and just to put it in context with the Fort Knox operation, you can see the size of the Fort Knox pit, which is just a little pinprick. The Peak Gold Deposit pit will be about 1/10 the size of the Fort Knox pit. But then you can see Fort Knox's overall land position and the overall land position we have with under the Tetlin lease. So this is a big exploration project. We do see a lot of exploration upside. We've only really focused on the very northern end of the area. We can outline here the Peak and the North Peak resources. You can see where the drill roads are there. But there are literally a dozen other named prospects which have been highlighted, or which are highlighted on this map. This is the gold and soils map. So we've done an extensive amount of grid soil sampling here. We've also done a lot of variety of geophysical methodologies to help identify the geology and the structural trends and things like that. So we have a lot of information on this part of the area, which we call the Chief Danny area. And you can see the size of the Peak and North Peak deposits there, the little black amoeba-shaped things. And we've got 4 kilometers of strike length along the Peak and North Peak trend to continue to drill. We've got a 5-kilometer long trend on the Discovery trend to the south to drill. And an interesting area on the North Saddle area. It's a large area of anomalism. We drilled a few holes up there, had some interesting sniffs and results, but again, it just represents another area of further exploration upside. And of course, that's all within this little circled area here, and the rest of the 675,000 acres is only been likely work. I'd say 95% of the dollars have been spent within that little circle there. So lots of exploration upside on the rest of the area. And then, of course, that's all on Tetlin. And then I mentioned earlier, we have the state mining claims surrounding the areas. There are 3 specific targets that we've been advancing. Triple Z is the most advanced. We have a great coincident soil gold copper anomaly there. And we've done a significant amount of geophysical work with both IP and resistivity and mag that have the classic signatures of a porphyry copper gold deposit. We're waiting for a final land transfer between the federal government and the state government to take place before we can drill here. We've done some initial drilling on the very periphery of the deposit. You can see a couple of drill holes highlighted there. They had some interesting results. They're not quite what I would call ore grade, but they're not too far off. And if we can get to drill, more towards the center of the system, when we get this land transfer done, we might find something interesting there. And then moving over to our other target area here at Hona. Again, solid geochemistry at the surface, geophysical anomalies. Again, classic sort of porphyry or intrusive hosted gold. So that's something we'll spend. Am I back on?
Yeah.
Hey, Dasha, are you there?
Yeah, Rick, you're on.
Okay. Had a little bit of a glitch there. My apologies. Now let's see. I'll just pick it up with this slide. We've got exploration upside on the projects there. We are going to, of course, the main event is still going to be on the Peak Gold Deposit and advancing that through the infill drilling, the feasibility study, and the permitting, so we can make a construction decision in 2023. So we certainly want to stay focused on that, and we think that'll be where we can add the most value in the shortest period of time for shareholders. I got my thing working here, so I'll just a quick mention on the Eagle prospect. I'm pretty excited to get out and get boots on the ground here. It's early stage. All we've done is some stream sediment and pan concentrate samples, but every stream for about 5 or 6 kilometers, 5 or 6 miles along strike is highly anomalous in gold and the associated metals. So very excited to get boots on the ground here. But as I said, we'll stay focused, and Kinross is staying focused on managing the site works at Peak. As I said, we've got a great land position. We've got a great partner in Kinross, and a very easy executable plan to achieve production in the next 3 years. So I stop there with just finalizing that we have a great partner in Kinross, proven operator in Alaska. We have lots of exploration upside, both on our joint venture lands, but also on our 100% owned lands. And I think we deliver a lot of value for shareholders. So I'll stop there and take questions.
All right. Thank you so much. So yeah, if you have a question, please submit them now. I'm going to start with some questions that were emailed in. The first one is, what are your plans for exploration on the GV lands?
On the joint venture lands, we've got about a $2 to $3 million program. Kind of depends on where you allocate costs, but we're planning to do work right in and around and adjacent to the deposit. We're not going to go off and go 10 miles away. We've got a lot of work, as I mentioned in the talk here. We've got a lot of information, a lot of database on geochemistry and geophysics right in and around the deposit. So we're going to stay pretty much on trend, if you will, with the no mineralization, then just extend it down dip and a long strike. We're going to have a meeting next month, to sort of get the input from all the exploration geologists that are working on this project from both Kinross and ourselves, and we'll pick everybody's favorite target and have an arm wrestle, I guess, to see which ones actually get drilled. But we've got there's a lot of years of exploration work to do here, so but the first one will get started this year.
Great, thank you. Kristen is asking, what is the exploration plan and budget on the state claims in 2021?
Yeah, so this year on our 100% owned lands, we're planning a $3 million program, and the lion's share of that would go towards drilling Triple Z, but that is contingent on that land transfer that I mentioned from the federal government to the state government taking place. We know those discussions are ongoing, and these things always get slowed down when you have a change in administration at the federal level. Basically, the old guy can't sign things anymore, and the new person comes into the job. It takes a while for them to get appointed and get approved and all those things. So it has been a little bit of a delay, as you do see with a change in federal administration when you need something from the federal government. And unfortunately, in this land transfer, it's part of the normal process that's been going on in the state of Alaska since it became a state. But it does take some time. So we'll hopefully we get that land transfer done and we can drill it. And ideal time to drill it for us is in the fall. So I'm not really sweating it right now. It's the best time of year to get out there. It's the driest, and you can kind of avoid getting your drill rig stuck in the wetlands. So we'll get that underway hopefully in September is my plan.
Got it.
August.
Thank you. So do you have sufficient funds on hand to get to commercial production?
Yes. We have over $30 million in the bank, and we expect, and so that's this year's program is our share, $5.5 million. I'm expecting next year's program to be similar in size. And so we should, and then that should get us through permitting, or the lion's share of permitting. And then if we can make a construction decision in 2023, I'm going to guess we're going to have about $10 million left in the bank. Now, we would need additional funding to pay our share of construction costs, but probably only something on the order of $20 million, $25 million. I'm already in discussions with groups on doing a debt financing at that stage. We'd feel pretty comfortable taking on debt at that stage. And so, I don't know that there's necessarily the need to issue more equity. We only have 6 million shares outstanding, so we're not talking about we don't have a lot of equity. My concern is really getting more shares out there and more trading going on in the stock, which is, of course, why we want to get uplisted to the New York Stock Exchange American. So that's that, and that process is underway.
Great. Yeah, that actually leads into our next question from Jeff. He's just curious about about you joining the New York Stock Exchange. Is that going to still happen in Q1?
Yeah, no, it's not going to happen in Q1. We're hoping to get ready by the end of Q1, and I think we're on target for that to make our submission. Yeah, I think right now we're finished. One of the things we have to do, because they passed the new administration did pass the new rules on guidance for reporting guidance on resources and reserves for mining companies. Those rules had kind of been put on hold by the Trump administration, but the new rules are now in force and effect. And so we have to do what's called an SK 1300 filing, again, similar to the 43-101. The disclosure actually looks 95% identical to 43-101. So it won't be anything new to us, but it is the first time that a QP has actually signed off on one, certainly for us, and it will be one of the first ones through the process. So we want to make sure it's every T's crossed and every I's dotted. So.
Right, absolutely. All right, so a question from David here. He says, you've been talking for some time about the coming energy transition and associated increased need for metals. In regard to gold specifically, what are some of the uses for gold in this transition that the Turlin area can help supply?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, and certainly gold is not typically associated with the new energy transition. That copper is certainly, and cobalt and lithium and manganese and lots of other graphite, all those other things. Gold certainly plays a minor role because gold's used in every electronic connection that has to, when that switch gets turned, if you absolutely have to have that connection be made, gold is what's usually used to ensure that. So, for example, in your car, in that little exploding pillow that comes in your face when there's an accident, that connection has to happen, and it can't fail, and that's why they use gold in those connections. And so and lots of other connections, if you can think about all the high use areas in electronics and in aviation. If you deploy a missile and you want to turn it off or you want to turn it on, you want to make damn sure that the computer connections all work. So that's gold's role in there. It's a very small amount, but we'll certainly see more and more gold and silver used in this energy transition in that way.
So that's great. Yeah, I didn't know gold was used in those cases. So that's very interesting. I was wondering if you could talk more about your site in Alaska. Can you operate there year round?
Yeah, and that's that's why I specifically showed the pictures of winter drilling. The main challenge is really your logistics. So if you're connected to a road and you can drive there, then you're nearly home free. Obviously, it's cold and dark. We've had a particularly cold winter. Lots of nice sunny days for the 3 or 4 hours of sunlight that you have, and that really is the other limiting factor is the sunlight. So again, if you're working, if you don't need to use a helicopter or an airplane to support your operation, then you're golden. And then it's just keeping people warm and safe. And if you can go back and look at that picture of the drill rig, it's in a little tent on its own, and it's nice and toasty and warm in there. The drillers love it. It's not really any different from working in the summertime, other than it being dark.
Great, yeah, makes sense. Tom is saying, first he says, thank you for your diligent efforts with Contango, but also Trilogy and Nova. He was asking if, is there any conflict here with Trilogy? And then his second question is, why just an OTC listing?
Yeah, Tom, nice to hear from you. Yeah, zero conflict with Trilogy. Trilogy stays focused and has continued to focus on working with South 32 and advancing the Ambler project. This is a completely different area, quite a ways away, logistically and temporally. So and we are working with a tribe, not a native corporation like we were with Trilogy. It's a little different dynamic, but the tribe actually owns and has title to the land. Kind of a unique situation in Alaska, and actually, frankly, in the United States. Most tribes own their land through the Bureau of Indian Affairs. That's not the case with the Tetlin tribe. They just flat out own the land. What was the second question? Sorry.
How come just an OTC listing?
Oh, the OTC. Yeah, that's just the way the company was originally set up. It was spun out of an oil and gas company called Contango Oil and Gas. When they came up to Tetlin, and where they were originally looking for oil and gas, and very quickly figured out that there wasn't any oil and gas here, but they recognized the potential for minerals. So they created that company out of the oil and gas, and it had an OTC listing. And it really has been a friends and family kind of a company. So when I came on board, I wanted to start the process of making this a more trading friendly company and getting more liquidity in the stock. And so we're working our way through that. The first thing to do was to get the deal done and settled with Kinross. Royal Gold was a great partner, from a funding standpoint, but they really had no interest in being an operating company. And that's certainly not, I'm not an operator. My background's putting deals together and as an exploration geologist. So I saw that as the real opportunity here. And so the company hired me to get something sorted out with Royal Gold. And so we brought Kinross in, and I think we put together a pretty smoking deal here. We are working on the NYSE American listing, as I mentioned, and we're hoping to have documents submitted here shortly. And it'll probably be a 1 to 2 month review process with the SEC. All this stuff just, if you need something from the federal government, it's going to just count on it taking time and taking more time than you'd like it to take. But that's the reality of the world we live in.
Right. Yeah, of course. You mentioned the Tetlin tribe. I was just wondering if you can go into more detail, and are they happy with this arrangement?
Yeah, there's a quote. In fact, I think I can call it up here. Whoops, I'm going to go the other direction. No, this direction. They like the project. Here's the quote. They like this plan and the fact that we have a real operator here now in Kinross. I think they've always known that Contango was always an exploration company and never really intended to really be the operator. So I think they're very pleased with Kinross. Kinross has a 25-year operating history in the state. They have an excellent track record from an environmental and community standpoint. So I don't think they or we could ask for a better operator than Kinross in Alaska. And that's not to disparage the other guys operating in the state, but they know, they know the project well. They've spent a lot of time doing due diligence, and you can see the quote here from Chief Michael Sam that they're pleased. And I have to say, in all honesty, that I suspect they're very pleased that they don't have to worry about having a tailings facility on their land. We'll use the tailings facility that's been operating for 25 years at Fort Knox and has been identified or been recognized as a really well-run tailings operation. They've actually enhanced the fish habitat up Fish Creek. It's a good name for a creek with a lot of fish in it. But literally that with the old placer mining had taken place at the turn of the century, the fish habitat had been largely destroyed, and through Fort Knox's efforts, they've actually enhanced the fish habitat all along that tributary. So that's if you plan for it, that's the kind of work you can accomplish, and I think that's a lot of the reason why Kinross has such a good track record.
Great, that's great. Another question here about the listing from Christian. Will Contango dual list onto the TSX as well?
Yeah, no plans to list on the Toronto Stock Exchange. In all our companies, 90% of the trading has always taken place in the U.S. and 10% in Canada, and most Canadians will just as easily trade on the American exchange. Not the OTC, I'll admit that, and that, like I say, that's the OTC is not the easiest. The OTCQB is not the easiest thing to trade on. So, like we say, we'll get the listing on the American, and no immediate plans to list in Canada at this time.
Great, thank you. So has Kinross done sufficient work to know that the peak gold ores could be processed at Fort Knox?
Yeah, absolutely. They wouldn't have spent $93 million acquiring their 70% interest if they had not absolutely addressed that question. This isn't an earn-in kind of a situation. This is it's not an earn-in type of a joint venture. They spent good money to buy their interest. We're happy to sell them 30% to get this to a point where we can fast track, and that's their language, fast track this to production. Again, very easy execution plan, low capital risk, low permitting risk, and the nice thing for us is we have the cash to be able to get all the way there.
Right, of course. So last question here, and I think a nice place to finish off is, what is your vision for Contango?
Yeah, so, in all honesty, we've kind of got the Peak Gold project where we want it, and we have the funds to fund our share through to production decision over the next couple of years. As I said, Kinross is a great operator, so I don't have to worry too much about the Peak Gold project. I'm also confident that we maintain our relationship with the Tetlin tribe, but I'm also confident that that Kinross will do a very effective job in their outreach and working with the Tetlin tribe in terms of jobs and safety and education and all the things that go along with being a good member of the community. So that really leaves us free to do other things, and we are looking at other opportunities. We've got our 100% owned lands and our Triple Z and Hona and Eagle projects right adjacent to Peak. So we'll work on those. We've got our plan for that this year, but we are looking at other opportunities. I've got a nice, we know Alaska well. I've worked there for a long time. We grew up there and know lots of folks, and I'm sure we can find some other interesting projects that I'll hope to be updating you on later this year. But right now, we'll help Kinross where we can, but I'm confident that they're pretty much executing a great plan here, and we've got the 2 drill rigs turning now. We'll probably have a resource update this fall, is what my expectation is, and but it's mainly an infill drilling exercise, so don't expect a big increase. I'm hoping the exploration finds a little bit of something, maybe another 100,000 ounces or something would be nice, but adding another year adds about $6 cash flow to the company, so it's pretty significant.
Great. Well, thank you so much for taking us through your presentation and the Q&A session. I also want to thank everyone who submitted questions and for joining us today. If you think of a question after the summit, we will be sending out a short survey where you have the opportunity to leave your contact details, and the Contango Ore team will be happy to follow up with you directly. And you can also find more information on their website at contangoore.com. So I'll hand it back to you, Rick, for the final word.
Yeah, I was just going to say thanks everybody for joining us. I put the slide back up that has the our email and contact information. If you've got questions, don't hesitate to send it to info@contangoore.com. Please do visit our website. It is a relatively new website, and we'll continue to update that as more information becomes available.